Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight's episode, Kicking It, our very popular action channel here on the Extreme Movie Show, where we cover everything from 1980s to science fiction to horror to 80s goodness. Right now, we're talking action. We're going back to 1976. It's our second full feature of Sonny Chiba. The first one, of course, being Street Fighter. This one is Karate Warriors from 1976. And I've got with me RDV, who's usually co-hosting along with me. Karate Warriors, RDV, it's one of those films that I think I had seen a long time ago. I've not seen it. And I went to go watch it first on YouTube, which is currently free if somebody's looking to go watch it, at least here in the United States. That print sucks. It was kind of weird. I had a tough time seeing full frame, but I went over to Tubi TV, where it's currently at as well. It seems like a little bit of a better print, but it seems like it's more full in frame where I could see it. So it's actually a different viewing experience. That being said, it's a lot like Street Fighter. It's got a lot of the same sort of shenanigans going on. It's extremely violent and bloody, which I appreciate.
Yes.
We'll talk about some of the fight scenes with the samurai swords and some of the neat pieces that they have, and just the B-level 70s niche of the type of exploitation film it is. But one of the things I just want to point out to people that listen to us, we have a lot of overseas listeners, is that depending on your region, depending on how you get it, make sure you're able to see it in full action, because YouTube here in the United States, sometimes, even though it's the full movie, even if you have ads or not, it's kind of choppy. Tubi TV was much better. Sometimes you have ads. That's just the way it is. But for the people overseas checking this out, you can probably rent it off of Prime. I think I've seen it on there, at least again here in the United States. But this movie, from what I've seen, never got released except for maybe the trilogy connection of the Street Fighter stuff off of Shout Factory or whoever, because it's one of those harder films to find, but it's definitely worth watching because it's definitely an interesting film.
They released it on a collection through BCI Eclipse. Released it at Sonny Chiba collection DVD set back in 2007. So it was part of that, along with some other movies of his. So it's been released, but trying to find another print of it, you might be able through Amazon. That's something I can think of, or maybe eBay if you're lucky. But trying to find an English dub, which is what I watched, which is on Tubi, that might be a little harder. A lot of times you find like English subtitles. That's it. But
yeah, because here in the United States, Prime's pretty good for martial arts films as well. Sometimes Tubi's been hit or miss, but they've been doing pretty good lately with some stuff. And then, of course, whether if you buy it or have it personally own it or have seen it, because we have some older people that listen as well. So we're talking about Karate Warriors, 1976, Sonny Chiba. It's our second full feature film with him. Street Fighter we did, and Sister Street Fighter we did, which has got a supporting role, very minor one. But one of the reasons why we picked this film, from my perspective, RDV, is that we like the fact that he's a big guy, physically imposing. He looks the part. He doesn't look like a 140-pound soaking wet guy, and he beats the crap out of 20 master ninja. He's a guy that when he hits is very violent in the swings. And one of the comments you made about the foreign martial arts films that we've seen that I think we both agree on is this: the violence in it, whether you like the blood or not, the fact that they don't pull back their punches, they don't go half speed, they go full throttle. And even though a lot of the fights are choreographed, they really kick and they swing. They don't look like they're just sticking their leg out like a turkey or something like that. They're smacking up. And in this particular movie, there's a lot of different fight scenes in it, but the one thing they'll have in common is when Sonny's using his fists, and he uses a lot of feet here with some interesting
full contact.
It's full contact. It's there's only a few scenes where it looks pretty blatant, where he just barely touches the guy with his foot. But that being said, the strikes are really good. He looks very powerful and explosive with his strikes.
I've heard people. I've read reviews on this before. People are saying like it looked like they sped up the camera when he does his fighting. He's doing the kicking stuff, which might be true. But then again, it's not Hollywood, so you might just be in it where it's normal speed. It's not slow down.
We're talking mid-70s, so I believe most of you, we're not really digital yet. So to sit there and cut it and speed it up can be done, but back then, like I say, not being an American film, the one thing I found interesting being a Japanese film here, and we've talked about how different countries have their own styles. They went the Japanese films, at least so far that we've covered, have gone for more violent style. But the thing that throws me off is they go for the really dated 70s funk type of score with it, which I like. I think it's cool. It's got a great little exploitation type vibe to it, and being graphic and violent. I like the fact that they didn't hold back, especially with some of the sword cuts. But to me, I don't know that they sped it up. I don't care if they did. It's not as gratuitous as some films.
So what really drew me into this film is not only the Sonny Chiba, but it's basically like if you ever watched Fistful of Dollars. This is which came out in 1967. This is a whole almost 9 years later, and basically the whole story plot is basically he's Sonny Chiba comes in. He's a merc looking for to be hired, and there's two brothers who took over because there was a original boss who had heroin stashed away somewhere. He ended up dying, and the guy who took over, he ended up going to jail. So then the two little henchman guys, brothers, rose up in the ranks, because everyone, top guys are gone. They had a falling out because before the old man died, he said this guy has the heroin. No, this guy has the heroin. Told the other guy. So they've been fighting for all this past couple of years, and there's no one's allowed to gamble because they all fighting over control. And so Sonny Chiba walks in, and he's pretty much the guy. He's like, I'm gonna make money off of this, and of course he's not the only person. There's a wandering samurai with a son, and this is why it popped because they're adding a twist to it because there was another one. I think it was called was it called Shinobi or I forgot or something like that. It was it was basically the same thing as A Fistful of Dollars, but it was a samurai. So it's like you're getting a combination of kind of both of those movies. So this guy is an honorable samurai, and his kid. I love his kid. Is it's just it's gotta be
like a kid. I gotta be.
Oh, come on.
I hate it because he's in there and he's just there to, actually, he served a role that you don't see when you have kids in movies. Because there's a couple fight scenes in here. Specifically, I'm thinking of one where he goes into the drug lord's den, and then the samurai guy shows up. But him and the samurai guy fight off the drug lords, and they're coming out. But they have the kid with them, and literally he's holding the kid. The kid's being thrown around, and they're catching them while he's doing his karate kicks, and samurai guys moving around. I'm like, you'd never get away with that in a film today. I mean, because it literally looks like they're tossing this kid.
Even before that, when they're on the pier, because when he's looking for a place to hide, because windy and stuff and all, and so he sees a kid, and he's looking at the little bar, and he has the slits there. He looks in there, and the kid's like, "Excuse me," opens the door and it slides it up and goes in. And he's like, "What the heck?" So he follows the kid in. The kid's got food, so he's like, "Hey, you want to be friends? Want to share the rice cake?" And he's like, "Come on, kid," and he's almost imitating, he's gonna steal it from the kid. And I'll pop the samurai inside the little the thing, and he's like, "Oh crap!" So, and then they immediately respected, knew each other, we're serious fighters. So what happens is that one of the gangs show up, and they end up getting a fight, and then they think they're gonna take the kid. So Sonny Chiba's like, "No, you're not." He takes the kid and threw him into the little net thing, what he said. And then he starts doing the kicks while the samurai is just cutting guys down, like they're nothing. It's like Samurai Jack, with Bruce Lee at his side. For those who watched the Samurai Jack animated show, it was fun. It's fast paced for me. It was like I said, the kid was kind of like, okay, the little kid is like, he does get on your nerves a little bit sometimes, but he's there to be as I guess a moral grounding to these characters.
I think it's just to contrast all the crap that's around, because this is kind of it has that same kind of gritty feel of the one we had talked about before with them in there, not necessarily Sister Street Fighter, but Street Fighter, and so it kind of continues that. But I think having them in there makes you kind of pause and take your breath a little bit, because there's a few minutes between different fight scenes in here, but a lot of them are different enough where you're going, okay, it's a little different than the last one.
But I like how Sonny Chiba is he goes in there. He doesn't do what he wasn't want to do. When he's playing these guys, he shows up in the little whorehouse, and and here comes the girl who's basically playing both the idiot brothers, the gangster brothers, against each other, and then he's like, I want to. He goes to the bar. He sits down. And he's like, I want a girl. And these guys like, sorry, they're all being used right now. And he's like, here, pour the bottle, and grabs the guy's hand, and then the guy's gonna take the bottle away. And he basically snapped the guy's fingers, broke it in the hand, and then throws him over the freaking bar, from behind the bar over it, just with his hand, just hip tosses him, and all the goons. You see that these are idiot gangster guys, wannabes. Some of them are probably 5'4" or balding. They're not the most intimidating, and where the richer older brother has some of his goons are more entertaining. I thought that was kind of funny. But the girl comes up and like the one who's playing both sides of the gangsters, and it's obviously her little club, and she basically just says I was like we don't have anything here for you. It's like you need to leave. And he's like here, grabs her and pulls her, and then he kisses her in front of the guy because he knows it's that guy's girl, the boss.
Mm-hmm.
And like and he she's trying to get away and finally lets go. It's like. And I love even later in the series, like they think she's gonna play him, like hey, let's have sex, you rescue me, whatever. Like he's like, you think I'm an idiot? And he's like, I could. he basically just tells her like you're a whore, like it's like and he's like he basically uses her.
Yeah, he sexes her up, gets the business,
and gets the information out of her.
Screw you, and he leaves. It's pretty funny. Like, yeah, what were you expecting, woman?
Because he thought she's gonna. He's like, oh, I've never been with such a strong guy. Like, I have such strong feelings for you. Like, I never in love like this. You'll protect me. He's like, no. He's like, I bet you get anybody here to protect you. He's like, I'm not doing that.
Well, a mistress may not serve two masters. That's just the loyalty thing. But
the way I guess Sonny Chiba's character learns about the heroin because in the beginning. The two gangs are fighting and one guy's on the street and he comes across him. He's like, call an ambulance. Like, and what? Nobody wants to help. So he puts the guy on like a little straw mat and just pulls his legs, kind of cracks him first too. I thought it was like it must have popped his leg back in spot, whatever, and drags him off to the hospital. Old man, and that's where the old man talks about. Oh yeah, they're fighting over some hidden or treasure, the heroin and stuff. So he uses that to his advantage. It's him like, hey, I know about the heroin. He's like, what? How do you know about that? Only my brother. And like, it's just how I love how he plays the idiots against each other. And then the samurai is a wild card because the samurai chooses one of the brothers, to work for him. And so he's like, oh crap. He's like, and I love how they have a mutual respect, but they know they're going to have to fight towards the end.
Exactly. And that's the whole buildup for the movie to me because a lot of it I think is pretty standard fare and you kind of get it. But some of the scenes that kind of pop out heading towards the end of the film is that there's a scene where Chiba, like I say, he goes into the drug den of one of the drug lords there, and he's got like this package with him, and they're all sitting around there, and they're all like giving him the business, like you're dumb for coming in here, you're stupid coming here by yourself. And Chiba does a very smart thing, and then he doesn't really talk a lot. So he unwraps the package and just lets it fall out. And it looks like a giant garbage bag, and it's the arm in it that he had chopped off.
Yeah, because the brothers were gonna come to a truce, and he's like, I can't have this because they'll kill me, they'll kill you, like some of the girl, they'll kill anybody who knows about the heroin. We're doing too much, and plus I'll be of a job. So he goes and he uses the girl. As I said, after he has sex with her, he uses her. Here, go lure this guy into the bar, and the guy shows up, and then he pops to the corner. And then he chops the guy's arm out, kills him, and then he wraps it up in the bag, takes it to the little meeting the two brothers are having because the one brother said, I have the heroin. And then they both revealed neither one has them because they're going to make a truce. And I love he just takes it, he throws it on a table here. And like, what is it? He opens up, and it's a freaking arm with tattoos all over. He's like, yeah, and he accuses his older brother. He's like, yeah, he tried to attack us, And he's like, I didn't do that, whatever. And I love how, because he uses that confusion to go look for the heroin because he says the samurai did it. He blames it on the samurai guy, which is the guy that the one older brother's enforcer. And meanwhile, the nurse is looking up to the samurai's son, and he's kind of like getting like kind of flirty. I thought he was gonna like hey, you wanna go go have a little toss in the hay. Nothing happened with that, but he did. She knocked over a statue or some kind, or no, he was picking up. There's a her sister. She happens to be the sister of the one that's playing the two drug lord guys, gangsters, and one of the gangsters' super brothers had given him like their old bosses, like it's like a little shrine thing, and he's like, and she's like, here, I don't want it. He's dead and whatever. So when Sonny Chiba was in the nurse's apartment in there, and just looking around, and he picked it up and it fell apart. And then he noticed there's a key in there. So you realize, because she's like, oh yeah, the guy, he's buried up in this little cemetery. He's like, oh, there's a safe up there probably. He's looking around, he finds stuff, and then he has to go against the samurai because the samurai shows up. And this is where it got cool. It's like, hey, as a kid, your brother's gonna kick your ass or whatever. You're running around and like one's on that side table and you're on this side. That's what it was. It was like a cat and mouse, and like, and then when one jumps through the over, you jump the other way. And it was so cool how they did the fight scene, and it was in a cemetery. I'm thinking like, hey, Mr. Samurai, this is hallowed ground. You can't fight me here.
Well, this is one of the final two big scenes in the movie to me, and it's an extended piece because what you're saying is pretty true, and it's a little bit of a different cemetery the way it looks as far as whether it's a real one or a cheap set piece. I don't know, but it's of course during the day that they do it, and this is the big fight. Now one of the things I wanted to kind of pause for a moment on before we talk about the fight and then the final beach scene, before we finish up with one thing, is this. I mentioned at the beginning that one of the reasons we like this film is because it's violent. It's not afraid of showing somebody getting cut across the scalp and blood spurting out and everything. Oh. You get all that. It's great. It's cheap. It's whatever, but who cares, right? But he almost to his negative point, Chiba is so big compared to these other guys, and even though he fights really physical and looks like a man as he's delivering all these blows, you get that one at a time ninja effect for the most part, which I kind of, in some scenes, it's really obvious. But we have, and again, if you watch a really bad version of this, I think because of the way it's filmed or some stuff's chopped off, if you don't have the right aspect ratio, the crash zooms in and outs are just going to drive you nuts because you can't see a lot of the action. Well, so the fights early on when you're watching it, you're like, okay, if it doesn't look right, try to find a better print, because once I went back and rewatched it on the Tubi print, which is a lot better, I was like, oh, okay, this whole scene here in the graveyard was a lot better to me, because this is where, like you said, they both have to fight off. They have grudging respect for each other. And Chiba, a lot of his scenes, he sticks the one hand up and they go really, really slow. The problem I had with this scene from a practical standpoint is he's going up against a guy that is a sword master, for God's sakes. And he kills him with his own sword. And I'm like, that just didn't seem realistic to me at all. I wanted it to be some other way, because right after that's done, and you're right, it's a nice little cat and mouse sort of game fighting, is when all the drug people come up there to attack him. And so then he has the sword and goes apeshit on there. So it's like a bonus round of just kill as many people as you can before the minute runs out. And it was a really good scene, actually.
I think I know what you're talking about as far as the shaky camera and stuff. That was when they have the two original gang members gangs were fighting, and they noticed that none of them were actually fighting. If you looked at it closely, they're just chasing it around.
Jason Bourne 2 level of shaky cam, which I have not seen in a lot of 70s films. The crash zooms, yes, and some of the different types of cinematography. Like there's a scene where the camera where they're getting ready to fight, where they show Chiba walking up in the background, but in the foreground you see the samurai like walking towards them. They zoom in, so you see the samurai swordsman's slippers and sandals that he's wearing with no socks or whatever, and then there's a little small gap near where you see Chiba. I'm like, how many takes did it take them to get that? It's kind of a cool shot, but I don't know if it was effective. It's just sort of there.
He's wearing traditional garb as far as the samurai outfit.
That is what's cool. The samurai guy, he does walk, and he seems menacing because he doesn't talk a lot either. So he's a legit, I'm not going to say bad guy, but he's a legit opponent for Chiba in this.
Well, and the thing is that they have mutual respect for each other. Sonny Chiba came in and helped rescue his son.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only that, but he also because the samurai guy, he tells his son, he's like, "Hey, move your head down." Yes, Dad. Or basically, doesn't have to say yes, Dad. He just moves his head down, and then he cuts the guy. So, but his son ends up getting cut too on the shoulder. So, and Sonny Chiba takes the kid and takes him back to the old man, the doctor, and the doctor, and they do this big blood transfusion. Sonny Chiba gives him blood. And this ends up being him getting weak and end up getting attacked while he was recovering and he's hostage. But did you see the size of those freaking syringes needles?
Yeah, they weren't messing around.
those were old school ones, like the big ones.
Horse ones, it looks like.
Yeah. So, and I was thinking, is it because they're poor? Because they don't have that much money over there, or is it because the 70s and that's all they had available was those giant horse?
I don't know if a lot of them were more glass rather than plastic back then. I'm not going to try to get all manufacturing on you with that, because that's 50 years ago. Things have changed now. Plastics are a little more widely available, so it could be something like that. Obviously, the quantities aren't the size they are here in the States.
If you're a fan of needles, you're better off just getting killed by the sword.
So the beach scene, the very final big fight there.
Yes,
this was interesting, and there's some great. Yeah, there's some interesting shots in here. Like there's one where he's going to fight the bad guy at the end after killing off everybody, and the bad guy kicks the sand in his eyes, so he's kind of blinded.
Yeah.
So he starts running into the water and then running parallel with the shore, and the other guy's kind of like, chasing him too. And the camera shot's like rolling, from the right to the left, following them. That's kind of cool. But then we get some crash zooms and stuff in here that I'm like,
what about the train scene, bro?
What about it?
It was kind of like you get Japanese Chuck Norris. Gives in with the hint because he's going to prison. Sonny Chiba gives him a cigarette because he knows he's going up to go away. And obviously we get the revelation that Sonny Chiba's character has been in jail before, so he knows where the guy's going. So he gives him the cigar to smoke. And in that turn, that guy helps him rescue him from the goons that are trying to, because Sonny Chiba has the drugs at this point. Right. He's trying, and he's staying with the kid. He's going to take the kid back to the mother because that was the samurai's last wish. Because the kid, he told the kid that his mom was dead. So the kid, So, and so on the train scene, this guy comes and helps me, and I love how he drinks the cop. The cop's like useless, like he's a big guy, and he's like, and they close the door, and they end up fighting, and they're gonna throw the kid off the train. He's like, give him the drugs or throw the kid off the train. I was like, poor kid. It's like, it was kind of funny because at the end I was like, because it's Englished up, so I was like. So, and what the kid says it just stuck with me as because this is not what a normal kid would say. It's like, sir, you just saved my life, sir, or something like that. It's like, and I'm thinking, how old is this kid? It's like 3 or 4, 7.
Oh, he's older.
You think he's 10? He's just short.
He's 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, but even then I gotta bring this up because Revenge of the Ninja. Remember the kid got in a fight with the other kids?
All right, stop. Slow down. You had mentioned that you thought this movie was better than Revenge of the Ninja, and I was like, no way.
Yes.
No, it's not even close. I mean, look, I like this film. It's got a lot of things to it. I wish Revenge of the Ninja was even bloodier, but it's a canon 80s classic. Sho Kosugi is, of course, the ninja bad guy, and Kane Kosugi, his son, who's now a martial artist, at that time as a kid, has got definitely the chops. Kane Kosugi would just slit this kid's throat. It's not even funny. And he should. They should make a movie where these two guys meet, somehow have some flashbacks, and then they have a big fight on the beach where, this kid gets ninjutsu. Maybe he's a heroin addict or something. I don't know. Actually, but no way this movie is better.
I want to follow up to this movie, and I want the kid. I wanted to take the kid at the end, who Sonny Chiba ends up raising, because the kid won't leave him alone. He's stuck with the kid. Because at the end of this movie, Sonny Chiba tells him, he's like, don't look at me. One of these days, you're gonna grow up and you're going to want to kill me because I killed your father. It's like, and I'm not gonna want to die. So after hearing that, I was like, I know you're 82 years old, Sonny Chiba, but can you make this movie? The kid growing up, I want to see this. I want to see him. Trying to take out, or maybe Sonny Chiba bites the dust and halfway through the movie, and the kid gets revenge, something like that. But Ed, when you watch this back, you can just slow down the audio if you want to. You can just go to half speed. But yeah, I was digging this more than I was Revenge of the Ninja. Revenge of the Ninja was kind of a drag for me. It was kind of a slow burner. This I just love the karate stuff, and fighting in here. Yes, did Revenge of the Ninja had that cool scene where he's chasing him after in the car? That was kind of cool. Yeah. They both got their highs and their lows, but I just like this a little better, And this kid, as far as him being better than Kane Shogi, I can see that Kane's better, but I still Kane's like the fact that. This kid was. I just love this kid though, because he knew how to take a beating. And then at first, we'll get to the beach scene now, because that's you're talking about the fight scene where they're fighting on there. Well, before they even started fighting on the beach scene, all of a sudden someone shot at them, and he cut it grazed his shoulder. So he took the kid, put him in his little neatly already pre-buried sand pit hole, and he threw this old scaffolding. Or metal scap or siding on top of them, and then you threw some more rope stuff. And I kept thinking because after this, the guy started trying to shoot him, and then the whole gang shows up, and then they're fighting it. They're just a little hut, and it starts on fire, gasoline. And I kept thinking, is the kid underneath that? Because when it collapsed down, because he's like looking at the fire, he's like, he's gonna get the kid. I'm like, and I'm thinking, did the kid get buried by the fire? He's like, because he's fighting the main guy. But can I touch on like how just horrible that gun was? That little gun.
Yeah.
How intimidating that gun was not. That gun was like a little the what you want to call it? The stock was bigger than the gun.
It was cheap. I mean, it was like a hairbrush for a gun or something. I mean, it was just awful. Yeah, the problem with this being cheap is there's a few scenes in there with not just set pieces like the gun you're talking about, and it being used as a semi-automatic. It's like, come on. I get this is supposed to be a cheap B film, but for God's sakes, even by 70 standards, you can dress it up. And yeah, this movie is a showcase for karate. That's all we really care about. So, you've got your dark scenes where you got the one boss guy smacking around a whore and he takes his belt off and starts beating her with it. It's like, okay, you get some legitimate gritty stuff in here, but then you're like, yeah, the kid getting taught, him literally tossing the kid into the hole, and it's great. And you're like, okay, I'm kind of digging this beach vibe scene. Okay, maybe some of the scenes are a little sketchy or the shots weren't great, but some of the parts may not be good, but as a whole, you're like, okay, I'm digging this meal. But then you get, like you say, this guy with the gun, and it goes, pew! It's like a little plinker, a little 22 or something. What? And then it goes like semi-automatic into the little easily burned structure next to him, that provides your big explosion at the end. I'm like, oh, come on.
But yeah, and I also want to quickly touch back on this when he's fighting against the samurai, with the whole sword thing, Sonny Chiba takes off his belt, wraps it around. It wraps it around his arm, and that's when the samurai goes with the sword on, he puts his arm up, and it blocks the blade. And I'm thinking, how sharp is that blade? Because it can cut through bamboo like pretty easily, as they showed.
Well, and the thing too with swordplay, you go back to the old classic Hollywood films with Errol Flynn, swashbucklers and types, Robin Hood, everything else there too. When you have people that are fencing, which is the long pointy one, that the point is literally to stick somebody with that point. You also have another kind, saber, which is more of a hack and slashing.
Yeah.
And so when you're in competition, those rules are a little bit different because the hack and slash, you score your points by when you make contact, you can then like drag the blade down towards the handle of the person's arm. And so when I see that samurai sword that is just supposed to be incredibly sharp, to your point, literally, that's one of those things where, yeah, as soon as somebody blocks it, you don't pause for 10 seconds for dramatic effect. You would slide it down, and you don't see any of that real swordplay in a lot of these films. And that again, takes it out. He does a cool thing there, though, when he blocks, like you say, with his belt, because it looks like it's a metallic belt to me or a gold belt.
Yeah.
He actually, while he's blocking with the one hand that he's showing you, he's taking the other hand and grabbing the swordsmith's scabbard and somehow gets it off of him and uses that, and then manages to ride away the blade and then hack him with it, kind of, sort of, in a very, actually, not too bloody manner, which is a little disappointing. It's like the samurai was going to get it by his own sword. It should have been spectacular, and it kind of wasn't.
My major complaint from that fight was when he goes to jump down. He's got the sword, and he's going to jump off the wall, and he's going to jam the sword into the samurai. It looks like he's going to do that. The samurai lifts up something too, and when we finally find where it is, after the samurai falls down, we see the board up. I'm like, how is that not going through him? Is he wearing like something that can protect, from a board going into his stomach? It had a point on it. How was he not just ran through with the board? That was they didn't explain. Was he wearing some kind of like iron vest?
They're too busy preparing the explosive blood packs rather than thinking about how realistic the scenes look. That's the only nitpick I'd have about it. But yeah, for me, my final thoughts is I agree with you. This is a movie we talked about doing for a little while, so I'm glad we got to it. It's definitely got a lot of violence in it, which is a good thing. Definitely a lot of blood splatter if you're into that. It's not what I'd call graphic, where you're like, ew, that's disgusting or gross. It's really cool on a B level, and it feels like that kind of film. Like I said at the beginning, here in the United States, depending on where you're at and who your provider is, you can see it on YouTube. However, Tubi TV, it has a better print. Ed Brewer's asking in chat about that. I know he'll probably want to check that out. Did you watch it on Tubi, or did you do Amazon?
I watched it on Tubi because Tubi has it for free most time. If I don't find a Tubi, I look on Amazon.
Yeah, so good movie. But for you, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts is I want to get a rice patty.
A lot of work.
Poor kid though. Like I said, that kid was like you look at this kid, he's the moral grounding, because Sonny Chiba wasn't a very nice character, to begin with. He was kind of looking for himself to make as much money he wanted, because obviously, and I love how the end the kid, he's like, he finally, where's the kid? And he looked at him on the beach, and what he's doing, he's throwing stuff in the thing, and we find out he's throwing the heroin into the package, and he's like, so what are you doing? I'm spreading my dad's ashes. He told me to spread them.
Yeah.
He's like, you idiot. Like, it's like, yeah, everyone knows the ashes are white. It was like $1 billion worth of heroin. The kid just kept throwing little packets into the ocean. And what's cool about this is that scene where they show the water rippling in from out the sea. That's kind of where you get and for those who watch Dragon Ball Z, because it's always sponsored by Toei Animation, that they put Toei Animation over that, I guess, that clip. That's what it looks like. What I've seen. I have to go like verify, but I think that's where they actually got the clip for the cartoons and whatever they do. They show that they're made by Toei Animations. It shows the ocean coming in. Because that was cool. That was a cool scene too. Watching the ocean ripples.
There's some good ones here too. So I think talk about Kill Bill, you can obviously see where there's some things that may be becoming, not sorry from this movie, from Sonny Chiba himself, and a few other things too. So it is interesting going back and seeing some of these older films and seeing, how more recent films too, how they kind of compare to, whether it's, Amy Johnson, Scott Adkins, Michael Jai White, even though we haven't really covered any of his at this point. But even the classic ones from the 80s, all the Chuck Norris ones that we've done on Kicking It.
And can I just comment on his name? Chico. I thought that was like the most oddest name I came across. I remember just seeing it in a samurai or karate movie from like Japan is Chico. It doesn't seem like it's a normal name.
It fits.
Yeah.
Hey, Chico. This is before Scarface. Yeah.
Right.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Karate Warriors, Sonny Chiba, 1976. Check it out on Tubi TV. It should be free there, and it's a good print. It's also on YouTube as well. You might be able to find it depending on what region you're in, other places. If you're into that kind of film, or you're in the mood for something kind of gritty and dark and violent, go watch it. It's a nice little action beef, like very violent in the old style that hopefully we'll get to see again one day, recently. But until then, I'd like to thank RDV for showing up, Ed Burr and everybody else in chat for checking us out here too, and especially to some of the newer people too. I had Soylent Chiba on Twitter texting me back because he thought this was kind of funny, and he responded back. So people like that are new that we're reaching out to that may have an interest in some of the films that we do, whether it's the action films, the horror, the 80s, the sci-fi, the classics. Check us out. If there's anything you want us to do, let us know, whether it's in chat, whether it's on Twitter. We'll be sure to take a look at it. For RDV and myself, everybody here involved at the Extreme Movie Show, thanks for listening as always. Stay extreme.